The forest floor breathes with water. Rain, insistent and unrelenting, beads across the waxy surface of a philodendron leaf before finally surrendering to gravity, tumbling downward into the dark. Beneath that canopy, where droplets strike with the rhythm of 1,000 tiny drums, a figure stirs in the shadows. It is not sleek like the snakes that coil through branches above, nor swift like the rodents that scatter between roots. Instead, a mass of muscle and mucus swells its sides deliberately, puffing itself into a grotesque balloon. What emerges from the leaf litter is a marine toad, the infamous Rhinella marina, glistening as if sculpted from the rain itself. Its eyes, rimmed with a bronze sheen, track the world with a patience learned across millions of years of survival. And from the thick pads behind its eyes, the toad carries a weapon, milky white and instantly lethal. Those swollen sacs, the parotoid glands, are not ornaments of skin but chemical factories of astonishing efficiency. Within them, compounds known collectively as bufotoxins accumulate in dense suspension, awaiting only the insult of a bite or the pressure of a predator's jaw. To a curious dog, the taste is immediate regret, the foam of poisoning frothing from its mouth within minutes. To a snake or a raptor, the consequences are faster, a convulsion, a tightening of muscle, and then stillness. Even crocodilians, armored lords of fresh water, have been found floating belly up after testing their jaws against the wrong amphibian. The toad itself cannot aim or project these toxins with the precision of a cobra's fangs or the atomized spray of a bombardier beetle. Its defense is instead blunt, passive, yet absolute. It turns its own body into a lethal risk, an organism that punishes any attempt at predation with ruthless chemical certainty. But the danger begins long before the toad itself is fully formed. In shallow pools where rain collects, female marine toads lace the water with strings of eggs, each one sheathed in a gelatinous casing. To the casual eye, they resemble necklaces of glass beads swaying with the ripples of the current. To aquatic hunters, fish, tadpole-eating insects, even rival amphibians, they are death disguised as food. Every embryo contains the same chemical signature as its mother, a dose sufficient to burn through the gut of almost any animal reckless enough to swallow it. And when the eggs hatch, the tadpoles carry that defense within their tissues, making them bitter, toxic morsels that few mouths ever consume twice. This early protection is so complete that the ponds can sometimes appear empty of life, the marine toad's offspring outcompeting native species not through speed or stealth, but simply by being inedible. The story of the marine toad is not confined to these rain-slicked forests. Humans, captivated by its voracious appetite for insects, once carried it across oceans as a biological weapon against crop pests. In sugarcane fields of the Caribbean, Australia and Southeast Asia, farmers imagined an ally that would leap from leaf to leaf, consuming beetles before they devoured the harvest. But evolution had not prepared the cane beetle to fall so easily, nor the toad to climb stalks. Instead, the amphibians multiplied on the ground below, feasting not on agricultural enemies, but on native invertebrates unprepared for such relentless predation. With each wet season, their populations surged outward, an advancing wave of toxin-bearing bodies. In their wake, local predators collapsed. Monitor lizards, snakes, even marsupial carnivores fell in droves, each victim undone by the simple act of attempting a meal. The ecological bomb had detonated. By day, the marine toad buries itself in the cool embrace of soil or hides beneath fallen logs, conserving moisture in a body that loses water far more rapidly than it absorbs heat. Like many amphibians, it is bound by the physics of evaporation, And in the tropical climate where temperatures soar and humidity ebbs, desiccation is a greater threat than hunger. Its skin, though thick by amphibian standards, still allows for respiration, a trade-off that makes the toad's surface both vital and vulnerable. Burrowing shallowly helps to buffer against these fluctuations, keeping its tissues damp until the air itself is safe enough to breathe without cost. As night descends, the toad rises with deliberate purpose. It is not graceful in its movements, each hop more a heave than a bound, but its strategy relies not on elegance, but on endurance. Drawn toward the artificial glow of street lamps and porch lights, it positions itself where insects converge in chaotic swarms. Beetles, moths, and termites spiral into the radiance, disoriented by wavelengths their senses never evolved to navigate. The toad waits below, a predator disguised as a puddle of shadow, and with sudden muscular precision, its tongue flicks outward. Coated in mucus and propelled with astonishing acceleration, it snares prey mid-flight before retracting it into a waiting mouth. This hunting method requires little expenditure of energy and produces almost no noise, allowing the toad to gorge unseen while larger predators pass by unaware. Its diet is indiscriminate. Ants, scorpions, small vertebrates, even other amphibians disappear into its gullet, their forms reduced to fuel for the next night's patrol. Each captured insect adds not only calories but also contributes to the toad's role as an ecological disruptor. Where native frogs may specialize, targeting only certain prey sizes or hunting in specific habitats, the marine toad overwhelms with sheer generalism. Its stomach contents have been found to contain everything from agricultural pests to beneficial pollinators, illustrating a truth that human ambition often forgets. Nature does not serve human interests exclusively, and adaptations honed for survival rarely align with agricultural goals. Yet despite its reputation as an invader and its capacity for destruction, the marine toad is also a marvel of evolutionary engineering. The very compounds that kill so efficiently have drawn the attention of pharmacologists who study bufotoxins for their potential in medicine. These steroids and alkaloids, when modified, show promise in treating heart conditions and certain cancers, revealing a paradox at the heart of biology, that what is fatal in one context may become curative in another. Such duality underscores the toad's role not merely as a villain of ecosystems, but as a participant in the broader chemical dialogue of life, a reminder that toxins are never designed for malice, only for survival. The marine toad endures in environments as varied as city streets, suburban gardens, mangrove swamps, and arid savannas. Its success lies not in speed, stealth, or strength, but in a portfolio of traits that buffer against adversity: toxic skin, indiscriminate feeding, tolerance for polluted waters, and a reproductive capacity that can number tens of thousands of eggs per season. Each feature is ordinary on its own, but together they form an almost invulnerable strategy. Where other amphibians teeter at the edges of extinction, sensitive to climate fluctuations and habitat loss, the marine toad thrives, a testament to the brutal effectiveness of generalized adaptation. Still, the presence of the marine toad is not without its vulnerabilities. While few predators survive an encounter, some have adapted through resistance or behavior. Certain snakes in Australia have evolved smaller jaws, preventing them from swallowing toads large enough to deliver lethal doses. Birds such as crows and ibises have learned to flip the toads over, consuming only the non-toxic internal organs while leaving the dangerous skin untouched. Evolution is relentless, and the arms race continues, chemical defense on one side, behavioral ingenuity on the other. Each act of predation becomes not just a survival event, but a step in the larger choreography of natural selection. As the rain tapers and the forest exhales, the marine toad settles once more into the damp earth. Around it, the night carries the calls of insects, the rustle of leaves, and the distant growl of predators that will never touch it. Its very body is a fortress, a wet, pulsating laboratory of compounds tested across epochs. To call it simply a toad is to miss the scale of its achievement. It is a walking biochemistry experiment, a living reminder that survival often comes not from strength or speed, but from the invisible wars waged in molecules and glands. And so it waits, patient as stone, until hunger calls it forth again. The rainforest wakes with the pale wash of dawn, light filtering through a canopy so dense it arrives in fractured shards, as though the sun itself must be negotiated leaf by leaf. Beneath the green vault, a scatter of movement animates the undergrowth. Dry leaves tremble, soil is flung aside, and a small russet body flickers in and out of sight. An agouti, sleek-furred, long-limbed, perpetually alert, digs with frantic precision, carving out a shallow cavity in the loam. From its mouth it produces a treasure, a Brazil nutseed, once sealed inside a shell so impenetrable that only jaws like these could liberate it. The rodent pauses, ears rotating like radar dishes to scan for danger, then swiftly buries the nut, patting down the earth with deft forepaws before bolting into the foliage. To the casual observer, this is a moment of small appetite postponed for later. But in truth, it is the rainforest's inheritance being banked. Agoutis are among the very few creatures equipped to break into the armored vault of the Brazil nut pod. The capsule itself, large as a baseball and nearly as hard, is designed by evolution to resist casual predation. Inside, however, lie the kernels that humans know as Brazil nuts, each one dense with fats, proteins and minerals, an evolutionary reward for dispersers willing to shoulder the task of transport. The catch is that almost nothing can open the fruit once it falls. Monkeys may batter it with stones, and macaws may chip away at thinner sections, but only the agouti has perfected the mechanical leverage. Its jaws, strengthened by enlarged masseter muscles and anchored to a skull built for grinding, generate pressures high enough to shear through husk and shell alike. The incisors, ever growing and sharpened by constant wear, are not simply tools of survival, but ecological chisels, unlocking calories otherwise sealed away from the forest. Yet the agouti does not consume all it harvests. Instead, guided by instinct and the eternal insecurity of small mammals, it hides much of its bounty underground. These scatter hoards are insurance policies against scarcity, caches that may be revisited weeks or months later when fruiting cycles falter. But memory is not flawless, and vigilance cannot keep pace with the sheer number of seeds tucked into soil. A forgotten Brazil nut may germinate, roots tunneling downward in search of water, a shoot pushing upward toward the canopy. In this way, an agouti's absent-mindedness becomes the foundation of an emergent giant, a tree that will one day tower 30, 40, even 50 meters above the forest, its own pods heavy with the seeds of future generations. From above, the agouti may appear merely as a skittish rodent darting between patches of shade. But from the perspective of the forest itself, it is a gardener on contract, paid in calories but delivering in architecture. Brazil nut trees depend almost exclusively on these rodents for reproduction, their seeds too weighty to be dispersed by wind, too heavily armored for most animals to exploit. Without agoutis, the distribution of Brazil nut trees would collapse into narrow clusters, their genetic diversity dwindling with every cycle. With them, the forest expands, renewed with each buried cache. A single agouti across its lifetime may unwittingly plant dozens of trees, altering the spatial pattern of the forest canopy for centuries. But the agouti is not immune to consequence. Its constant foraging, its frequent pauses to dig, make it vulnerable in a world of ambush predators. Ocelots patrol the shadows, their coats dappled with the camouflage of dappled light, and snakes, such as the boa constrictor, coil invisibly among fallen logs. For these hunters, the agouti's diligence is a beacon, every scratch of soil or rustle of leaves betraying its position. Survival becomes a matter of vigilance balanced against hunger, and so the agouti's life is conducted in bursts of tension, a dig, a pause, a freeze, then a sudden dash into concealment. Its legs, longer than those of most rodents, are designed not for endurance, but for explosive evasion, carrying it in bounding arcs across the underbrush. The irony of the agouti's existence is that it feeds the very predators that cull its numbers, while simultaneously feeding the forest that shelters them all. By planting trees, it ensures a supply of fruit for future generations of mammals, birds, and insects. By serving as prey, it transfers the calories locked within seeds and fruits upward through the food web. It is both consumer and consumed, an intermediary whose role cannot be reduced to survival alone. Every cache becomes both a lottery ticket for its own future hunger and a contribution to the forest's persistence long after the individual is gone. Scatter hoarding is more than instinct. It is a strategy of risk management evolved in environments where food pulses with seasonality. In the Amazon, abundance and scarcity are not evenly distributed. Certain months bring cascades of fruit and insect prey, while others yield little more than scattered resources. To hoard is to buffer against unpredictability, but to scatter is to prevent theft. A single large cache risks discovery and loss to competitors. Many small caches spread the risk across space. This strategy has parallels in human economies, where diversification shields against collapse, yet here it is practiced by a rodent whose brain weighs less than a walnut. Evolution teaches efficiency through failure, and scatter hoarding has been honed by countless forgotten seeds sprouting into testament. The agouti's relationship with the Brazil nut tree extends further into layers of ecological interdependence. Brazil nut flowers are pollinated not by casual visitors, but by large-bodied orchid bees capable of prying open their complex petals. These bees, in turn, rely on orchids for essential compounds to synthesize pheromones. Thus, the reproduction of the Brazil nut tree hinges on the survival of orchids, bees, and agoutis in tandem, a web so finely tuned that the absence of any partner would unravel the cycle. The agouti, by burying seeds, participates in a chain of interactions that binds insects, plants, and mammals together in a choreography invisible to the untrained eye. Nor is the agouti restricted to Brazil nuts alone. It buries seeds from countless tree species, each contributing to the heterogeneity of the forest floor. In doing so, it influences patterns of succession, which trees dominate, which form clusters, which rise alone. Forest composition is not random. It is guided by dispersers like the agouti, whose choices determine whether a seed falls into the stomach of a rodent, the hollow of a forgotten burrow, or the fertile darkness of soil. Over decades, these decisions shape not only the canopy, but the diversity of creatures that depend on it, from monkeys that harvest fruit in the upper layers to insects that decompose the fallen leaves below. When viewed through this lens, the agouti becomes more than a skittish rodent fleeing from shadows. It is an engineer of continuity, a bridge between the cycles of fruiting and the permanence of towering trees. Its incisors, sharpened by necessity, unlock resources otherwise sealed beyond reach. Its caches, scattered across hectares of forest, become nurseries for saplings that will define the skyline for generations. Its very vulnerabilities, the need to eat, the risk of predation, ensure that energy moves through the food web, feeding ocelots, snakes, and raptors. At dawn, as the forest warms and insect calls swell into chorus, the agouti darts once more from cover. It carries in its mouth a seed large enough to burden its jaw, yet small compared to the potential it contains. With a pause, a scratch, and a spray of soil, it deposits the seed into the earth and disappears. Days may pass before it remembers the location, weeks before it decides to return. Perhaps it never will. And in that forgetting, the forest grows. The seed banker survives not only by hoarding food, but by inscribing itself into the architecture of its world. Its life is fleeting, vulnerable, and hunted, yet its impact stretches centuries beyond its lifespan. Where the marine toad arms itself with chemistry, the agouti arms the forest with trees. And so the cycle continues, each buried nut both a meal deferred and a monument to the patient, unseen gardeners of the Amazon. The river does not always announce its dangers. In the Amazon's floodplains, where water spreads like a living mirror across the forest floor, hazards are often concealed beneath a thin veil of sand. A soft current stirs, grains shift, and for a moment what seemed like nothing more than sediment rippling with the flow resolves into form. A disc-shaped body, flat as a fallen leaf, lies half-buried in the substrate. Its eyes protrude slightly from the surface, swiveling like periscopes to track movement above. Then, almost imperceptibly, a tail rises in a slow arc, lifting from concealment with deliberate grace. At its tip, the serrated outline of a spine catches the light, a blade coated in venomous mucus, the stingray's silent proclamation that even in apparent stillness there is danger. Freshwater stingrays, Potamotrigonidae, are among the Amazon's most enigmatic residents, their presence a constant reminder that the river hides as much as it reveals. Unlike their marine relatives that patrol coral reefs and estuaries, these rays are exclusive to South America's great rivers. Their evolutionary journey led them inland millions of years ago, where they abandoned salt water for the ever-shifting labyrinth of floodplain lakes and sandbanks. Here, their flattened bodies became perfect instruments of concealment, designed to vanish against the bottom. Unlike fish that dart or weave, stingrays survive by erasing their outline, letting the riverbed itself serve as camouflage. The tail spine, however, is their most infamous trait. Lined with backward-facing serrations, each barb is sheathed in mucus infused with toxins that inflame, necrotize, and torment. To humans, an accidental step on a hidden stingray delivers agony, described as burning fire radiating up the limb, sometimes leading to long-term tissue damage or infection. Yet, this weapon was never evolved with humans in mind. Its true purpose is deterrence, a warning to predators that a stingray is not passive prey. The sheath of mucus ensures that the spine does more than puncture. It delivers chemical punishment that amplifies pain, making even a glancing wound unforgettable. In this way, the stingray alters behavior at the ecosystem level, discouraging larger animals from cruising too carelessly across the benthos. Despite its formidable defense, the stingray is not purely a creature of avoidance. Beneath its body lies a mouth adapted for crushing, lined with flattened teeth arranged like mosaics of cobblestones. These plates are not for slashing flesh, but for pulverizing. Crustaceans, mollusks, and armored fish are seized and ground into digestible fragments. The ray's strategy is ambush. It remains still until vibrations betray the approach of prey, then flutters its disc in a sudden surge of motion to pin the victim beneath it. A rapid undulation funnels the quarry into its waiting jaws, where crunching power turns exoskeletons into shards. By preying on organisms often protected by hard shells, stingrays help regulate benthic communities, preventing the over-dominance of armored species that might otherwise monopolize the riverbed. What allows them to detect prey in a medium of mud and silt is not vision, often useless in water clouded by sediment, but electroreception. Along their snouts and body margins lie tiny pores called ampullae of Lorenzini, organs capable of sensing the faint electric fields emitted by muscle contractions. A fish's heartbeat, a crab's twitching leg, even the bioelectric pulse of hidden invertebrates sends out signals detectable to the ray. In effect, the stingray reads the invisible script of life beneath the substrate, interpreting patterns of electrical activity to map food against noise. This ability turns the murky floodplain from a world of blindness into a canvas of signals where the unseen becomes navigable. Their reproductive strategy further deepens their mystery. Unlike many fish that scatter eggs into currents, stingrays are live bearers. Embryos develop within the female's uterus, nourished first by yolk and later by a specialized uterine milk rich in lipids and proteins. When young rays emerge, they are not fragile larvae drifting helplessly in the current, but miniature versions of adults, already armed with functional spines and capable of benthic life. This viviparity is costly for the mother, limiting the number of offspring but greatly enhancing their survival. It represents a classic trade-off in evolutionary strategy: fewer births, but each with a better chance of reaching maturity. In the unpredictable floodplain where eggs would easily be smothered or swept away, this investment secures the ray's continuity. The ecology of stingrays is inseparable from the seasonal heartbeat of the Amazon. During the wet season, floodwaters transform forests into submerged galleries, expanding habitats and dispersing prey. Rays follow these rhythms, gliding silently into drowned groves and feeding among roots where fish congregate. In the dry season, as waters retreat into channels, they are forced into closer quarters, resting in sandbanks and oxbow lakes where interactions with humans often occur. Fishermen tread carefully, for a single misplaced step may end a day's work in agony. In some cultures, the stingray is feared as much as the jaguar, not for its predatory power but for the stealth of its weapon. Yet their presence exerts influence far beyond human encounters. Predators that might otherwise dominate the floodplain, giant catfish, caimans, river dolphins, adjust their foraging patterns to avoid frequenting ray-rich sands. Prey species, too, are forced into vigilance, their movements shaped by the knowledge that stillness may conceal danger. In this way, the stingray functions as a kind of landmine of the riverbed, an organism that alters traffic patterns without ever needing to attack. Its potential, rather than its action, dictates the behavior of others. This ecological effect is subtle but profound. It redistributes energy flow, shaping the dynamics of predator-prey interactions across the aquatic landscape. Stingrays are not invulnerable, however. Jaguars, capable of hunting in shallow water, sometimes pry them from the mud, flipping them to avoid the sting before delivering a crushing bite to the head. Humans, too, have long captured them for food, despite the risks. In both cases, predation requires ingenuity and courage, an acknowledgement that to challenge a stingray is to gamble against pain. But such pressures are essential, preventing populations from unchecked growth and maintaining the balance of floodplain ecosystems. Despite their reputation as hazards, stingrays embody the quiet sophistication of riverine adaptation. Their flattened form is not simply a disguise, but an energy-saving design, allowing them to rest motionless while currents sweep overhead. Their electroreception transforms opacity into opportunity, granting them a sensory window where vision fails. Their reproductive strategy invests heavily in each offspring, ensuring that the next generation emerges armed and competent. And their venomous spine, while infamous, is less a tool of aggression than of influence, sculpting the decisions of predators, prey, and even humans. The river closes over them, as it always has, sand settling back across their backs until only the slightest ripple betrays their presence. A passing shoal of fish veers slightly, sensing the disturbance, and resumes its course a safer distance away. The stingray does not move. It does not need to. Its strength lies in stillness, in the knowledge that a single lash of its tail can redraw the boundaries of risk. To live in the Amazon's floodplain is to recognize such boundaries, to understand that beneath the silence of sand, the hidden blade waits. In the dim hours between dusk and full night, when shadows thicken into a near-solid fabric, a thread of silver glistens faintly. The filament is almost invisible, stretched taut between bark and stone, yet it is no mere accident of silk. Suspended at its center, upside down in perfect stillness, hangs a spider no larger than a fingernail. Its body gleams jet black, polished as obsidian, and across its abdomen burns a single hourglass mark of red, a warning written in pigment, ancient and unmistakable. This is the black widow, Latrodectus, a creature whose elegance belies its reputation and whose very survival strategy is rooted in chemistry, architecture, and patience. The hourglass is no decoration. In the language of evolution, it is aposematism, a visual proclamation that danger resides here, danger that cannot be ignored. Many predators, from birds to lizards, are color-tuned to recognize red as a signal of toxicity or unpalatability. The widow's body, glossy and conspicuous in certain lights, seems almost to betray its position, yet that betrayal is deliberate, an advertisement of its arsenal. Within its diminutive frame lies venom, among the most potent in the animal kingdom relative to body size, a neurotoxic cocktail centered on a compound known as latrotoxin. This protein does not simply paralyze. It hijacks the nervous system at its roots, forcing open calcium channels in nerve endings, causing a catastrophic release of neurotransmitters. For the spider's insect prey, the result is rapid and absolute: convulsions, immobility, and collapse. And yet, the black widow is shy. It does not rush to bite, nor squander its venom recklessly. Against humans, envenomation is rare and usually defensive, the spider preferring retreat if given the chance. But when it does sink its fangs, the effects are severe. Muscles seize in spasms, pain radiates across the body, and in extreme cases, vital functions falter. For the widow, however, such reactions are evolutionary excess. Its true targets are the much smaller bodies, flies, beetles, and grasshoppers that stumble into its trap. Venom is expensive to manufacture. Each molecule represents a chemical investment drawn from the spider's limited resources. And so the bite is reserved for necessity, each drop metered with precision. The web itself is a paradox of chaos and control. Unlike the geometrically perfect orb webs spun by garden spiders, the widow's snare is an irregular tangle, a labyrinth of sticky and non-sticky threads interwoven with apparent disorder. Yet to call it messy is to misunderstand its design. The lower strands stretch taut to the ground, forming trip lines that entangle passing insects. Once snagged, the prey thrashes, vibrating the lines in signals the spider cannot ignore. From her suspended position above, she rushes downward, trailing silk as she goes. In a single motion, she wraps her victim, binding it in layers of filament so strong it rivals steel by weight. Immobilization is mechanical first, chemical second. Only after the prey is fully subdued does she deliver her venom, the bite transforming a struggling insect into a nutrient-rich slurry to be consumed at leisure. Silk is her second weapon, as astonishing as her venom. Produced from specialized glands, each type of thread has a unique chemistry and function. Dragline silk forms the supporting scaffolds, tensile enough to suspend the spider's body for weeks without snapping. Capture silk, adhesive and elastic, ensures that once prey touches, escape is improbable. Wrapping silk, extruded in rapid succession, hardens into bonds that resist tearing even under violent struggle. To study black widow silk is to confront the limits of material science. It is stronger than most synthetic fibers, resilient in wet and dry conditions, and spun at ambient temperatures without toxic solvents. For the spider, it is not just building material but lifeline, weapon, and even parachute when juveniles disperse by ballooning on threads of air. The widow's choice of habitat underscores her adaptability. Unlike many spiders confined to deep forest or specialized microclimates, black widows thrive in proximity to humans. Bark crevices, piles of stones, abandoned shoes, or the corners of barns become suitable lairs. Their reclusive nature ensures they are seldom seen, yet their webs accumulate quietly in neglected places. This overlap with human structures explains much of their notoriety. Where we see clutter, they see anchor points. Where we store tools, they weave ambushes. Coexistence is not predatory in intent, but opportunistic. They follow the architecture of our lives because it resembles the architecture of their survival. The widow's venom is often portrayed as an instrument of fear, but it is also an engine of precision. Latrotoxin targets insects with exquisite efficiency, locking into receptors they cannot afford to lose. For small-bodied prey, there is no survival, no partial resistance. This ensures that the widow can subdue organisms far larger than herself, a necessity for a predator whose hunting method is stationary. She does not chase, she waits. And waiting requires that when opportunity finally presents itself, it must not be squandered. Evolution has tilted the scales. Better to wield a venom that overshoots the mark than one that risks failure. In the ecological theater, the black widow is both predator and prey. Wasps, particularly mud daubers, have evolved strategies to neutralize her, paralyzing widows and sealing them alive in clay chambers as provisions for their larvae. Birds occasionally risk a strike, plucking spiders from their webs before the venom can register. These interactions remind us that even the most dangerous weapons can be overcome by specialization, and that survival is never absolute. The widow's hourglass may warn most intruders away, but nature is full of creatures willing to gamble. Her reproductive cycle adds another layer of intrigue. Males, smaller and more delicate, approach with caution, trembling the web in ritual patterns to identify themselves and avoid mistaken predation. Once accepted, mating is brief, and in some species, the male sacrifices himself, consumed by the female whose caloric needs during egg development are immense. The practice, while macabre to human sensibilities, ensures both the nourishment of the next generation and the genetic legacy of the male. Egg sacs, papery and delicate, are suspended in the web, each containing hundreds of potential offspring. Few will survive the gauntlet of cannibalism, predation and dispersal, but those that do will carry forward the design, hourglass, silk and venom, into the next cycle. What makes the black widow remarkable is not simply that it kills, but that it has scaled its weaponry to match a world far larger than itself. A body measuring centimeters carries biochemical tools capable of collapsing nervous systems, of deterring mammals thousands of times its size. This asymmetry between size and power is its evolutionary triumph, a microscopic assassin that does not need to chase, only to engineer. The widow exemplifies how nature achieves efficiency not through brawn, but through specialization, condensing lethality into molecules invisible to the naked eye. As night deepens, the widow hangs motionless once again, her silhouette framed against the dim shimmer of silk. The web trembles faintly, tuned to the slightest disturbance. Somewhere in the darkness, a moth approaches, drawn by chance or error into a space it does not comprehend. When it collides with the strands, the vibrations ring like a bell, carrying to the spider's poised limbs. She descends with a swiftness that belies her size, wrapping, binding, injecting. Within moments, the struggle ends. The web settles into stillness, its architect returning to her vigil. Here, in the overlooked corners of both wilderness and human habitation, the black widow persists. She is not chaos, but design, not frenzy, but calculation. Her survival is built on threads finer than hair, on venom molecules crafted with surgical precision, on a body small enough to vanish, yet potent enough to command respect. In the balance of the ecosystem, she is proof that power does not require size, only strategy. A microscopic assassin cloaked in silk, armed with chemistry, a venom engineer sculpted by evolution's patient hand. The river lies quiet, its surface broken only by drifting leaves and the concentric ripples of insects that skate across tension, strong as glass. Then, without warning, the stillness fractures. From the bank, a lizard erupts in a blur of motion, sprinting upright on its hind legs. Each step slaps the surface with explosive force, sending arcs of droplets glittering into the air. For several breathtaking seconds, the creature defies expectation, running not on land, but across the river itself. Only when it reaches the opposite bank does the miracle end, claws digging into wet soil as the basilisk vanishes into the foliage. In the silence that follows, the river closes once more, as if erasing proof of what has just occurred. This is the basilisk lizard, Basiliscus basiliscus, celebrated as the Jesus lizard for its improbable sprint across water. What appears miraculous is in fact physics, evolution, and anatomy converging into a single feat of survival. The basilisk's hind feet are fringed with scales that splay outward as each foot strikes the surface. That slap generates a pocket of air beneath the foot, a fleeting cushion that supports the lizard's weight for just long enough to push off again. Success lies not in floating, but in outrunning gravity, steps delivered with such speed and precision that the animal remains upright while sprinting across the liquid plain. The mechanics are unforgiving. Each foot must strike the water at precisely the right angle, with sufficient velocity to displace the surface and generate lift. Too slow and the lizard sinks, too steep and it plunges. Juveniles, weighing less, can run farther distances than adults, sometimes spanning over 20 meters before fatigue forces them to dive. Larger males, heavier but stronger, achieve shorter runs, though their speed still buys escape. This balance between mass, stride frequency, and water resistance is a razor's edge maintained by countless generations of evolutionary trial. But water running is only one facet of the basilisk's dual existence. Most of its time is spent in the borderlands between arboreal canopy and terrestrial ground. Basilisks bask on low branches above rivers, their olive-green scales broken by crests that ripple like sails along their backs and tails. From these vantage points they survey the world below, alert to the slightest flicker of movement. Heat absorbed from the sun fuels their diurnal activity, allowing rapid bursts of energy when threats arise. When alarmed, they may choose among three strategies: vanish into foliage, sprint across open ground, or take to the water in either a run or a dive. This plasticity of escape routes makes them unusually elusive prey, a constant frustration to snakes, raptors, and mammals that rely on predictability in their quarry. The basilisk's diet reflects its opportunism. It consumes insects in abundance, stalking grasshoppers, beetles, and ants along riverbanks. But it is no strict insectivore. Flowers, fruits, and tender shoots supplement its menu, as do fish fry and tadpoles captured in shallow pools. This breadth of feeding ties it to multiple ecological layers, controlling insect populations, dispersing seeds through digestion, and shaping aquatic recruitment by preying on juvenile fish. By spanning such diverse food sources, the basilisk ensures that it can exploit resources year-round, a necessity in environments where seasonal floods and droughts alternately enrich and strip the landscape. When threatened, the basilisk's water running is more than spectacle, it is survival strategy. Raptors such as hawks and kites patrol the skies, their vision piercing enough to detect the twitch of a lizard's limb from great distances. Snakes, including boas, stalk silently along the forest floor, relying on ambush rather than chase. In such a world, to stand still is often fatal. By transforming water into a highway, the basilisk gains an escape corridor unavailable to most terrestrial animals. Predators that might otherwise claim it are momentarily baffled, forced to choose between pursuit in a medium they cannot master or abandoning the chase. The river becomes not a barrier, but a passage, a boundary recast as opportunity. Yet the same waters that enable escape also serve as refuge of last resort. When outrunning danger fails, basilisks dive headlong beneath the surface, sinking to the bottom where they cling motionless among roots and detritus. They can remain submerged for up to half an hour, slowing their heart rate and relying on oxygen stored within their bodies. This physiological capacity, akin to shallow diving adaptations in aquatic reptiles, expands their survival toolkit. It is not only speed but stillness that protects them, a paradox that defines so many creatures of the rainforest. The basilisk's morphology reflects this dual life. Long limbs, especially the hind legs, provide both stride length and leverage for climbing. Toes are elongated and fringed, specialized for splaying wide against water, yet equally useful for gripping bark. The tail, muscular and flattened, acts as counterbalance in bipedal runs and rudder when swimming. Crest-like structures along head, back and tail may serve multiple functions: visual signals in mating displays, thermoregulation by increasing surface area, or even hydrodynamic shaping during aquatic maneuvers. Each feature is multi-purpose, honed by the demands of a life negotiated between river and forest. Reproduction adds another layer of ecological consequence. Females lay clutches of eggs in moist soil, often near riverbanks where humidity ensures survival. Hatchlings emerge fully independent, miniature versions of adults already capable of water running in proportion to their size. Their small mass makes them especially adept, allowing them to dart across streams beyond the capacity of older individuals. Yet they are also the most vulnerable, targeted by herons, snakes, and predatory fish. Mortality is staggering, but those who survive contribute to the continuity of a lineage defined by speed, adaptability, and cunning. The basilisk is not invincible. Raptors have learned to intercept them mid-run, swooping low over rivers to seize them before they reach cover. Large fish lying in ambush beneath the surface may strike at diving juveniles. Even humans, fascinated by their spectacle, sometimes capture them, reducing local populations. Yet their numbers remain resilient, bolstered by high reproductive rates and the adaptability that defines their niche. Unlike specialists tied to narrow conditions, basilisks thrive in the fluctuating dynamics of disturbed habitats, tolerating human-modified landscapes so long as water and cover remain. In ecological terms, the basilisk is more than a curiosity. Its constant vigilance and unique escape strategies shape predator-prey dynamics across its range. Predators adapt their hunting patterns in response to the basilisk's unpredictability, while prey populations feel its omnivorous pressure. By dispersing seeds and preying on insects, it threads itself into both plant and animal communities. By diving and sprinting, it redistributes predator effort, shifting the balance of energy flow. In short, the basilisk is not a sideshow miracle, but an active agent in the riverine ecosystem, its water running a daily influence on how life and death unfold at the forest's edge. As the day wanes, the river again lies still. Sunlight scatters through leaves, casting mirrored fragments onto the surface. A raptor glides above, scanning for movement, but the banks remain quiet. Then, with sudden violence, the water explodes once more, droplets suspended mid-air, claws flashing, a green silhouette racing across liquid like a skipping stone come to life. It lasts only seconds, yet in that span, physics, biology, and survival converge into a singular performance. The basilisk vanishes into the thicket, leaving nothing but ripples behind. The rainforest is full of adaptations that appear miraculous until understood. For the basilisk, the miracle is not faith, but physics, not myth, but evolution. Its feet are engineered not for walking on water, but for escaping death through mastery of boundaries. Where others see a river as barrier, it sees a pathway. Where predators expect certainty, it delivers surprise. In this way, the basilisk occupies its role not as ruler or hunter, but as escape artist, the lizard that turns water into a highway. The river is never truly silent. Beneath the drone of cicadas and the distant calls of macaws, another sound emerges. Sharp, percussive barks rolling across the water like signals in a code. From the bend of a blackwater tributary, a ripple spreads, followed by sleek brown heads surfacing in unison. Whiskers bristle, eyes scan, and bodies nearly 2 meters long surge forward with coordinated strokes. A family of giant otters has arrived, and with them comes a transformation of the river's rhythm. Where they patrol, prey scatters, predators reconsider, and the balance of the aquatic ecosystem bends around their presence. The giant otter, Pteronura brasiliensis, is one of the Amazon's most commanding carnivores. At nearly twice the length of most otter species, it is both formidable and conspicuous, its throat patch of pale fur acting as an identifying badge among kin. Unlike solitary hunters such as jaguars or caimans, giant otters are communal specialists. They move as a unit, bound by social ties and reinforced by constant vocalization. Their barks, growls and whistles form a chorus that maintains cohesion, alerts others to threats, and orchestrates hunts. Few predators in the rainforest wield teamwork with such efficiency, and fewer still impose order on their environment with such tireless energy. Cooperative hunting defines their role. Fish are the primary quarry, from armored catfish to swift characins, and catching them in murky waters requires relentless pursuit. Otters fan out, herding schools into shallow banks or corralling individuals into ambush zones. Each strike is a calculated blend of speed and agility, a streamlined body lunging with teeth adapted for gripping slippery prey. Their success rate is high, not simply because of their strength, but because their strategy is collective. One otter flushes, another intercepts, and a third delivers the final capture. The efficiency ensures that each family member, from dominant breeding pair to yearling pups, is fed. But fish are not their only concern. When faced with competition from larger predators, giant otters display a boldness disproportionate to their size. A caiman basking at the water's edge may suddenly find itself surrounded, harassed by snapping jaws and slashing swipes until it retreats. Even jaguars, supreme hunters of South America, have been documented abandoning riverbanks when confronted by a determined group. The otters do not always kill their rivals. They rarely need to. Instead, they enforce boundaries through intimidation, reinforcing their dominance over stretches of river where their families hunt and rest. In this way, they function as apex regulators, shaping not only prey populations, but also predator behavior. The cost of such authority is energy. Giant otters burn calories at a furious pace, their metabolism demanding near constant intake. Unlike caimans that can lie motionless for days between meals, otters must feed daily, often consuming several kilograms of fish each. This hunger translates into pressure on fish communities, preventing any one species from dominating the river. By targeting medium-sized fish, they influence recruitment patterns, indirectly affecting the survival of juveniles and the abundance of larger adults. Their hunting keeps the system dynamic, pruning excess and redistributing energy across trophic levels. The ripple effects extend outward. Stingrays, for example, avoid shallow banks heavily patrolled by otters, their distribution subtly altered by the presence of these mammalian enforcers. Predatory fish, too, are forced into deeper waters where hunting efficiency drops, creating pockets of refuge for smaller species. What may appear as a family's daily forage is in fact a form of ecological governance, where behavior and abundance are recalibrated by the otter's relentless activity. Their social structure underpins this influence. Families are centered on a dominant pair that monopolizes breeding, ensuring cohesion rather than competition within the group. Offspring from previous years remain to assist in raising pups, defending territory, and contributing to hunts. This cooperative care increases pup survival, which is crucial given the hazards of river life. Jaguars, caimans, and anacondas all pose risks, particularly to the young. Yet survival is not only a matter of defense, but of constant teaching. Juveniles are guided into hunts, learning the choreography of teamwork long before they master it. Such knowledge is inherited not genetically but culturally, passed from generation to generation within the family unit. The riverbank itself becomes an extension of their society. Dens carved into soft soil provide shelter, while latrines mark territory with both scent and visual cues. These signs communicate occupancy to other otters, reducing the risk of direct conflict between families. Such territoriality ensures that fish populations are not overexploited by overlapping groups, a natural regulation that maintains sustainable hunting grounds. The river, vast though it seems, is divided into parcels patrolled with vigilance, each one enforced not by law, but by the presence of sharp teeth and disciplined teamwork. To witness a family in full hunt is to see the Amazon's aquatic ecology distilled into urgency. The water boils with movement, fish scattering in panicked bursts as otters slice through the current. For minutes at a time, the surface is chaos, splashes, whistles, and lunges blending into a spectacle of coordinated predation. Then, as quickly as it began, the noise subsides. The otters emerge, each carrying a catch, their muzzles slick with scales and blood. On the bank, they consume their meal in brief respite before sliding back into the current, hunger already driving the next pursuit. Such intensity comes at a cost. Giant otters are highly sensitive to disturbance, and human activity has pushed them to the brink across much of their range. Once widespread, their populations crashed under the weight of the fur trade, habitat destruction, and ongoing conflict with fishermen who see them as competitors. Today, they survive in scattered strongholds, where conservation efforts strive to protect both their social structures and the ecological services they provide. Their scarcity has made encounters rare, yet where they remain, rivers bear their unmistakable signature: balanced fish communities, regulated predator distributions, and a constant hum of activity. From an ecological perspective, the giant otter embodies the principle that apex predators are not defined solely by size, but by influence. A jaguar may command fear through solitary strength, but an otter family commands respect through unity, persistence, and unrelenting presence. Their enforcement is not episodic, but continuous, a daily grind of hunting, patrolling, and defending. They do not simply inhabit rivers, they administer them, redistributing life with every bark, chase, and dive. As twilight descends, the otters regroup, their bodies slick with the day's exertion. They groom each other on the bank, reinforcing bonds with gentle touches and chirrups before retreating into the security of their den. The river, momentarily free of their patrols, seems to exhale, fish resuming their cautious foraging, caimans sliding back into favored haunts. But balance has already been enforced, and tomorrow the cycle will begin anew. In the grand calculus of the Amazon, the giant otter stands as the enforcer, not by killing indiscriminately, but by shaping the possibilities of life within the river. Its constant demand for food ensures no species dominates unchecked. Its collective strength deters rivals from overreaching, and its vigilance redraws the boundaries of risk. In a world of currents and uncertainty, the giant otter makes the river knowable, disciplined, and alive under its watch.